So my name is Dan Tiller, and it's actually not my current job. I've just retired after doing 30 years in the police service. So that was about 2 years ago, but that's what I'm going to talk about on the basis that it's probably the most relevant to people who are going to be. Okay, so my first job wasn't actually in the police. I got a job as a salesman while I was waiting to go to police college. So I used to sell TVs and videos and that sort of thing. So that was my first sticking my toe in the water of the work world, really. And then I went to police college, which was 20 weeks of training, which everyone has to go through. That's for everyone, no matter what your specialism will end up being. And then after that, I went on the beat with a big helmet on, as everyone has to do, down in South London. And then very quickly, 2 years after that, I then joined a public order unit called the TSG, which is a sort of a riot control public order unit. So that was good fun in my younger days, in my 20s. That was good. We had various demonstrations. We had acid house parties. We had the poll tax riots. So it was quite an interesting time. And then in the mid-90s, I decided that I wanted to go into firearms. I had no experience really of firearms other than the fact that I was in the Army Cadets when I was younger. And I decided that I wanted to really challenge myself now. So I joined the firearms department called, it was then SO19 in the Met Police. And I stayed there for 22 years and got promoted a couple of times within that branch, and managed to diversify many times. And so ended up staying there until my retirement. So I did 22 years in firearms, which obviously became my main specialism. By the time I finished as an inspector, it was mainly pretty much the clue is in the title, inspecting. I was inspecting everything from the training to the operational plans, to the operational execution of the duties, to the budgets, to the personnel, to all the people that I had working for me. So really, it was an overseeing role. But again, as part of that, I had to go out and speak about the department, the branch, and sell the department, if you like. So I was sort of in an advertising marketing role a lot of the time as well, because I had to go to the Home Office, I had to go to other police forces, I had to go to the military. So I ended up having to speak to a lot of often very important people in front of a lot of very important people, which, bearing in mind the background with my speech where I came from, used to take me out of my comfort zone a lot. It's really been, I think, a journey through the whole thing, because I went into Hendon Training School not even being able to say my own name. I couldn't actually say words that began with a D, words that began with a T. Any hard words I had real problems with. So in a job where you're supposed to be confident all the time and supposed to be in charge and all over everything, it's a pretty difficult impression to convey when actually you can't say your own name. So really, the whole thing for me has been a journey from, the most important thing for me has been learning the tools, how to control my stammer, which on some days is bad and other days is not so bad. But really, I suppose if you had to pick out one or two things, it would be when I went for promotion each time, it's not just a written exam, it's now play acting scenarios out. So having to either conduct a briefing, a meeting, a performance review, or actually to act out live play scenarios out on the streets. And doing that without stumbling over your words is a massive thing for me. And probably the other one would be, I ended up in the police, as I said before, having to go around and do a roadshow, if you like, a show and tell in front of many, many senior people, standing up on stage with an audience of maybe 100 or so people. And all the time I'm doing it, I'm thinking to myself, is this going to be the day when I don't speak, when I can't speak, when I stumble over my words? And that's really, it's the culmination of learning the breathing techniques in order to be able to go through it, and the varying my language, because even as I'm speaking to you now, I'm replaying, or sorry, I'm foreplaying every word that I'm about to say in my brain, and I'm rehearsing it. So I'm making sure that it's coming out and that I can say it. So everything that I'm saying to you now, I've already said in my head, because that's the way that I can deal with and make sure, or to the best of my abilities, make sure that I can speak what I think is to the best of my ability. So those two achievements probably encapsulate my journey, if you like, from not being able to speak very well at all to now having a bit of a handle on it. Thinking back to 13, okay, well, 13 is a difficult age for everyone, obviously, because there's a lot going on, and you haven't quite learned who you are yet. But if I looked at myself now, I would think, wow, how did he hold down a job in the police for 30 years, for a start? How people had a vocation that must always join. I was never like that. I just sort of fell into it, really, and I fell into the specialisms within the police as a matter of luck, timing, chance, really. Found something that I turned out to be okay at, and decided to stay with it. So firstly, it would be surprise, and secondly, it would probably be amazement that I was able to, from my poor speech when I was 13, that I was able to push through, learn the techniques, found out what worked for me, and be in a job where I had to put myself out there. So my 13-year-old self would be really, really surprised. And I think that's important for other youngsters to know, that actually just because you're having a hard time at 13, and bearing in mind, not only that, at 13 I was tall, skinny, had ginger hair as well. You know, there wasn't a lot really for people to not take the mickey out of. So I had to overcome it. And so just because at age 13 you think that it's going to be like that forever, well, it's absolutely not. And there's lots and lots that you can do in order to be able to overcome it. Everyone has their own way. Everyone has their own style. My way is not for everyone. But yeah, so just because you're 13 and you think it's really, really hard now, the confidence that comes with age and the stuff that you learn makes it easier. So it shouldn't hold you back from anything you want to do. Because I was told when I wanted to join the police, and then more importantly, the armed police, and you've probably seen on all the films, at some stage you do have to shout at people, stop, armed police. And I was told by colleagues at the time, in a sort of jokey, or maybe not always jokey way, well, how are you going to get those words out? By the time that you get those words out, it'll be too late. And someone will either have shot you or shot someone else. So that's no good. And if I would have taken that to heart, I would never have done anything. So I decided that that was going to spur me on, and that wasn't going to stop me, and that I was going to carry on regardless and find a way through it. And that's how I've done it, as I say, with breathing, thinking about what I'm going to say, and importantly, linking words between words or letters that I know I can say and letters that I can't say. So I have a soft word that I link into the harder words, and I've been told it sounds pretty natural and people don't notice that I'm doing it, in which case that, for me, that's good, and that's my way of dealing with it. Okay. Early days, it certainly did. Certainly when I was at school, it certainly held me back, because I didn't want to speak in class. I had to stamp my foot on the ground to help my words come out, or I had to bang the leg of my chair to help to force the words out, if you like, to push them out. And that sort of thing really doesn't do you any good with confidence. So I would think in early days, it did hold me back. But what it did do was it spurred me on to actually try and overcome it or deal with it the best I can. And in recent years, I think that it's done the opposite. It's pushed me into positions that maybe I wouldn't have been in before. And it's actually made me think about the words that I use that I wouldn't have done before. So I'm now very careful with my speech, the effect that my words have on other people. So in early days, it did hold me back, maybe more than it should have done. But in later years, I would say no. And I would think that in looking across the whole spectrum, I would say that it shouldn't hold anyone back, but there will be times that are tricky. You know, if you're sitting in that meeting room and you're waiting for the meeting to start, most people are just thinking about what they're going to say at the meeting. What I'm thinking about is when you go around the room and you introduce yourself, am I going to be able to say my name? And if you don't say your name, and it's happened once or twice, and you can't, well, what sort of impression does that give in a meeting? So again, you know, there are times when people with a stammer have to think about a lot more than just what's on the meeting agenda. You know, you have to think outside the box an awful lot, as opposed to just what your subject matter may be. But I've found that now I can use that to my advantage. And yeah, every day is a journey as to how my speech is going to be that day.